and welcome everyone. This is Seek Sustainable Japan, and today we are talking about yoga and wellness and a vegan cafe and entrepreneurship. And we have the amazing Rowie in Nagano. Thank you so much for joining, Rowie.
Thank you so much for having me. Ohayo gozaimasu.
Oh, hi, gozaimasu. And it must be very, very snowy now there. You're
Yes,
in
it is.
Nozawa
The
Onsen
snow
town.
is falling as we speak outside my window, and I'm thinking about the snow clearing that I'm about to do when I leave. But it's good. It's great. It's nice. It's what we're here for. It's what people come here for. So it's good. One of the
I
things people come here
I
for.
have a picture you posted on Instagram here. This is from November. So you can
Yes.
see a little bit of snow, but it must be completely covered now, right?
So that picture, I actually took that was from sorry, it definitely looks like that right now. That was from March or April. It's the road, it's basically the exit from the yoga studio. So that's our view when we leave the yoga studio, and it's so beautiful, but pretty much looks the same now. It's a very early start to the season, which is cool. Feels like during COVID, we had a lot of very snowy winters that no one was able to enjoy. And it feels like a very similar, even bigger start than normal. So I think it's going to be a really big winter, which is exciting for
Yeah,
that other people
right?
can finally enjoy that and be a part of it.
Now, being from Australia, originally from Melbourne, but you lived around the Sydney area, you moved around. But I just assumed when I met you in Nagano that you were one of the snow bunnies, but you said you actually not that comfortable in the winter cold. Is that right?
No, I'm an absolute summer baby. Absolute summer baby, ocean baby. Never been landlocked like this before. I always say I think the reason I could resonate with Nozawa so much is because there's a constant theme of water here, like with the onsens every day. And if you've never been here, like the streets all have the onsen water flowing down the sides of them like gutter. So there's a sound of flowing water all the time, and then you're always immersed in the onsen waters all the time, and
It
nature.
is
So
it's a magical place, and you're famous for, as in the name, onsen, so
yes.
all the natural hot springs, and even when I visited in summer, people were doing the onsen tour, going from hot spring to
Mm.
hot spring. It was absolutely amazing to see.
Yeah, I love summer more than I love winter here. So I'm not a ski. I like skiing and snowboarding. Like I love it. I was lucky enough that I had parents who always took me skiing when I was young, and that's what brought me here is to go skiing. But I'm much more of a surfer and summer baby. And I did the ski season here when I initially moved as like a change of lifestyle for what I thought would just be a little bit. Um, so yeah, I'm definitely more of a winter baby, but the onsen. So I love summer here because there's onsens, which, if it's hot to go in the onsens in summer, but the waters are just so good for you. And you've got like the taps where you can fill up buckets with the icy cold water. So I usually, winter and summer, I'm always like a cold, hot person where I'll go between the two, and it's nice.
Right. It's so interesting, and then I love this picture of you doing yoga in the snow.
Yes, that was from spring one year when I was that was the end of one of the biggest winters that I've seen, and like I think this will be like my sixth winter or something. And that was the end of one of the biggest winters, and I think that would have been from April, and the snow it was one of the first sunny days, well, not, just spring days where we were like, it's over, spring is coming, and I was so excited about it. And there was so much snow outside, so I just did yoga, and I did a like little yoga flow, and it was so good.
Beautiful. Now, even in winter, you have this beautiful, cozy yoga space with beautiful shadows. Tell us about this. You said, because you saw a need. There was only one teacher in town.
Mm.
You're in a place where people stay and do snow sports. It seems like a perfect place to set up yoga and
Yeah.
wellness, right?
Yes, so I like, when I was 19, I grew up in Melbourne, but when I was 19, I moved to Byron Bay, which is like it feels like a summer beach version of Nozawa Onsen, or Nozawa feels like a wintry Japan version of Byron to me. And I was so young there, and it was sort of now Byron is really well known for yoga. There's so many yoga studios and everything, and it's so well known as a health and wellness place. But I was so young to want to settle there. And then when I came to Nozawa and sort of decided to stay during COVID, it felt like I'd been given a second version of Byron to tap into, because it feels like such a no-brainer to do yoga here with the onsens and the nature, and I think that yoga really complements skiing and hiking and biking lifestyle. So when should I? It's sort of connected to how I stayed here, if I can start that question. So I came to Nozawa to do a ski season as a little break from my very summery lifestyle. I came in December 2019. And then I actually got really sick when I first moved here, whether it was the original COVID or whatever, but I got super sick. And then as soon as I got better, I was just thrown into the busyness of the ski season and work. So by the time March came, when COVID was starting to kick off, I felt like I hadn't experienced it at all, and I didn't know Japan or know Nozawa. And that if I had have left Japan then, which is what everyone was telling me to do and the world was sort of suggesting to do, I would have left with like a sort of misunderstanding of Japan and Nozawa. And, none of us knew what COVID was going to be. So I thought it would blow over in a couple of weeks or, a couple of months. And it seemed like a good enough place to stay. So I decided to stay. And people had been asking me to teach yoga during that time. And so I was teaching very casually for friends, because I've always been a yoga teacher and love teaching. And then when I decided to stay, I was like, okay, I definitely want to teach yoga. And COVID progressively started becoming a very grounding thing. And there was a space in the village, which was an old dojo, martial arts, just empty big room. And I was looking at that, and another girl in the village was looking at it because she wanted to do a climbing gym. And our friends were like, you guys should do something together. So we connected to start. She was going to do the climbing gym and bar in the evenings, and I was going to do the yoga and cafe in the morning. So it worked really well. So I started teaching. So I started that in November 2020. And it went really well. Well, it went well enough that I was like, there's something to this. So, but it was very hard sharing the space, and I recognized people wanted to do yoga in the afternoons, especially, not just the mornings. So she kept the space, and I moved on, and people in the village were very supportive and liked what I wanted to offer, because it was quite unique in town. There's one other teacher, very local. She was born here and everything, Hiromi. She has Snow Crystal Yoga, and she's great. She has a really good yoga and retreat offering. She was offering yoga classes very early at I think it was 6 a.m. in the mornings, and it didn't feel super accessible to me when I was traveling there, because it was slightly out of the center of town and just very early, and sort of similar to what I was doing at the dojo, only in the mornings. And people knew what I was wanting to do, and so people were coming to me with options. And one of the manager at the time, or the general manager at the time of Nozawa Hospitality, was like, I have a room that could be used for yoga. Do you want to come take a look? And I looked at it, and it was this big old banquet room, which kind of had a bit of a weird energy to it, as some old Japanese rooms have. But I was like, oh, maybe I can make this work. And so I signed a lease with them to share the space, and did a lot of Palo Santo in there, built some things to sort of make it a little bit nicer or more homely, got lots of plants. I already had all the yoga props and mats and everything that I'd bought to set up with the dojo, and started the yoga studio from within the View Hotel Shimataya, which is that big tatami room space that you just pictured. It's really beautiful. It has big windows out overlooking the mountains, and it's warm, and the tatami floor is so beautiful to practice on. And then to the right, where the kabuki stage is, I sort of turned that into a community pre-class or post-class tea gathering area with a heated mat. So it's been really nice offering yoga classes from there, and it sort of feels like a very different space in Nozawa, which the reason I've stayed here is because I feel like I'm really offering a service that isn't otherwise offered, in terms of a slower space and a softer space. Ski towns can be pretty yang energy and focused on riding hard and playing hard and just hard, hard, hard and fast, fast, fast. So it feels like a nice space to slow down and soften and release. And that's a lot of feedback that I get, is people are just like, this is like this little sanctuary in Nozawa to slow down and unwind. So
That's
everywhere else,
beautiful.
yeah,
And that
everywhere else in the world. Oh,
yeah.
sorry.
That kinda ties into, you redeveloping and redesigning the cafe space as well to also be
Mm.
more natural light and stuff. Can you talk about that
Yes.
a little bit? Yeah.
Yeah. So, when I started the dojo, I was obviously doing the cafe, like smoothies and yoga. I always wanted to do the two together. I've worked and managed a lot of studios like in the world, and you sort of want a complementary space. Both a cafe wants a complementary space and a yoga studio wants a complementary space. So I knew that I always would want to do something like that together. Um, and that's why the dojo worked well. But then obviously when I got the tatami room at the hotel, I wanted a space that I could have the cafe at and offer healthy food, because there's very limited vegan options in Japan, or just even healthy food options, which is my main focus. I don't really advertise the cafe much as a vegan space. It's completely plant-based with the option to add eggs. So everything is vegan, but you've got the option to add eggs just to make it a little more accessible to people. But yeah, so I wanted to have that. And then again, the town, locals of the town really saw that I wanted to offer something unique and that was needed in town, because I also have a strong focus on gluten-free, or just offering foods to people who have allergies. I'm quite mindful of that coming from Melbourne. There's a lot of that.
And
So
you mentioned, can I just add, you mentioned, I think when I met you, that you've always kind of wanted to run a cafe, even
kind
as a
of, yeah.
kid.
Yeah, when I was a kid, like, I got it sounds so weird, but, like, when I was young, I got as Christmas presents, like, subscriptions to Delicious, like, which are food magazines, or Home and Garden. When I was a kid, I wanted to read, like, Home. I was just like a little I watched the Martha Stewart documentary the other week, and I was like, "Sweet, I'm obsessed." I just love sort of I love the way food helps. I love creating communities and, like, opportunities for people to connect, and I really think food is a way to do that, and yoga.
And
So
did that kind of come from your family? Because you mentioned how your father introduced you to yoga. Did the
mm.
healthy eating and the kind of the healthy lifestyle, did that also come from your friends and family growing up,
My
or
family, both my parents are athletes. My dad's a tennis coach and was a tennis player. My mum was a champion squash player. They were very busy trying to keep the family, like, they wanted, because they were athletes, they were very competitive and wanted to give us the best. So they were very busy trying to do that. Um, we definitely grew up like healthy and active, and we were always fit and ate well as kids. I think my diet has always been healthy. It wasn't My mum isn't a huge meat eater. I grew up eating meat. My dad loves steak, and yeah, I definitely grew up in a meat orientated, protein comes from animals environment and dairy. Um, but when I was really young, I think it was when I was 12, I ate a prawn for the first time, and I was like, I had to shell it myself, and I was like, I'm vegan. And but I wasn't really supported in my family, so I quickly became not vegan. But I was always orientated towards vegetarian, plant-based lifestyle, and always loved cooking when I was young. So always had an interest in reading magazines about cooking, always loved cooking, would always cook a lot. And my parents were really busy. Like, definitely, my parents, like, having a family dinner wasn't a super regular thing, or if it was very hard to orchestrate, and we were just a bunch it was hard. So it maybe came out of opposition to that. Like, I recognized that could be a dinner table, could be a space to connect. And because my parents were so busy, and my mum, like, they always fed us healthy food. But I recognized that I could help my parents a lot by cooking when I was young. So I used to cook a lot. Does that answer your question? And then I'd always they sort of encouraged the habit of cooking and baking and everything like that. My my grandma, who I'm really close to, was always a homemaker, if you will, and into baking and everything like that.
Your foods are just amazing. I mean,
Thank
I
you.
I ate at your cafe, but I also you just made a quick breakfast at home, and it was just beautiful. So
Yeah, I love it. I love
you're
cooking and
able to take the
healthy food.
simple and healthy and just make it beautiful and
Yeah.
really satisfying. It's
Well, I
gorgeous.
guess I've always grown up cooking and everything like that, and then I've also traveled since I was 18, like, a lot. I've traveled quite extensively, and I've been vegan or vegetarian, floating between the 2 since I was 20, when it was much less accessible through so I always had to cook a lot, especially when I was traveling, and try to think of ways to eat locally but in a vegan way. So I've always had that natural, like, creative process of how to make something healthy or how to make something vegan, and I've always connected food to how it makes me feel. Like, if you eat something that's full of bad stuff, I very much feel that, and I don't like that. It's the same as why I love yoga. It makes me feel good, so I do it. Healthy food makes me feel good, and I think it's really easy to make healthy food taste good. Actually prefer it more often than not. It's just a matter of convenience. So
That's
thank you for
awesome.
liking
Yeah,
it.
no, of course, and you got an award from your community, Best
Yes.
Restaurant Cafe this year.
Yeah, it's so nice.
Congratulations.
It's very much like a staff award, so it just means that we're very well loved. Like, there's incredible restaurants, obviously, in Nozawa in Japan, but it's very much a very well loved award, which was really nice. We received it the last 2 years, actually, which was very.
That's wonderful. It's so nice when you're accepted and appreciated by all the passion and all the effort you're putting into what you do,
Totally.
right?
That's
Yeah.
why I reason, like, it's not an easy life here, especially, like, I'm on my own, um, and it's not an easy life here, but I really feel appreciated here, and I feel like I'm offering a service that isn't otherwise offered, whereas healthy food at, like, you know, yoga and healthy cafes or vegan food or breakfast cafes, whatever, they're pretty saturated everywhere else in the world. But here it feels like I'm offering a service rather than cutting someone else's lunch, which is why I have stayed. And yeah, Nazawa's generally a very local town, and I feel extremely welcomed by everyone, which is so nice, like, especially by the very local people, because that's how I've gotten the spaces that I have got. Um, and I feel like I'd be crazy to walk away from that. So,
Yeah, I'm just showing your Japan Times feature article
mm,
here. It was fantastic to see you featured in the Japan Times, and one of the things, in the article is about people often ask you if your Japanese partner is helping, and
yeah,
no, you're doing it on your own. So, can you
yes.
talk a little bit about, like, switching from a working holiday visa to a business visa? Was that a
Mm.
really tricky part of the process or kinda
I said
straightforward?
to the reporter in the Japan Times, like, they were like, what have you learnt in Japan?" And I was like, "Patience and adjusting to the way other places and people do things." Like, I think if I like, everything this is why I say everything is yoga, because you have to adjust and be patient, and, yeah, it wasn't easy. It definitely wasn't easy, but I was patient, and I just also believed that if I was meant to be here, then it would work out. But things only work out if you put the work in. So I was like, okay. And I love the Japanese expression, like, or like, gambarimasu or gambatte kudasai. It's like, do your best, and that's all that matters. So I was like, I'm going to do my best, to see if this can work out. And if it works out, then great, I'll stay. If it doesn't work out, then like whatever, I won't. And I am not a paperwork person, which is shocking that I live in Japan and I'm not a paperwork person. It's one of the reasons why I struggle, because Japan is very paperworky, as you know. So I got an immigration lawyer to help me set up the company. So I incorporated a company in Japan. I have my yoga company in Australia. Then I incorporated a company here in Japan. And through that, sponsored myself as a business manager. So it was definitely a process with a ton of forms, very much about like ticking boxes. I studied at university. I have a bachelor's degree, which helps obviously get visas, and a lot of experience in yoga and managing things. And I had a good business plan, solid business plan and everything. Like, I was lucky that I was applying for the visa through COVID, which was when the world slowed down, and I had more time to comply with all the paperwork that they wanted.
But
So
I think
that was
that's
good.
so important. It's so key to hire people who can help you do it properly.
Delegate.
You don't
Exactly.
have to do everything
Yes.
yourself. There are
I
people
do most
here
things myself, and
to
I'm
help
learning
you,
to
right?
delegate.
Yes.
Exactly, that's what it's all about, and that's what it's about this time of year too. Like, I've got staff at the cafe and yoga studio, and it's like, okay, I just because I can do everything doesn't mean I should or that I can. Like, like humanly can't do everything that I want to do because I'm doing a lot. So it's like, just I know what I'm good at, and so let's do that, and then let's like delegate the things that I'm not good at, or that I could do but would take me 200 times longer than someone who can do it. Like, so I think getting an immigration lawyer, especially in Japan, is very good. It's
Yeah.
expensive, but it's not break the bank expensive. And one of the things why I decided to do it here is because you need at the time, you need about 5 million yen to invest in a business, to get a business manager's visa, which is like the equivalent of what, like, is that like 40,000 American dollars, which
Something like
is
that, yeah.
it's a lot of money. But to be honest, that amount of money isn't going to change your life anywhere in the world except Japan. So in many places in the world, it was a big stretch, that money, but I knew that I could get the most out of that money here and with this business plan and everything like that. And COVID was still happening, so I decided to invest.
Were you
And
were you able to, like, get loans or raise that money yourself, or was it a crowdfunding thing, like asking people
a couple of
to
things.
support?
My
Mhm.
mum is amazing. She has always been like the businesswoman and breadwinner of the house, and I love her. She really distilled in all of us kids like independence, but also she's like the realist and my dad's the dreamer. So when I approached her about the business plan and idea to live here, I was kind of expecting her to shut me down, not in a bad way, just like for her to give me like reality. And she was like, I think this is a really good idea. And I was a bit shocked because I was like, oh God, if mum thinks it's a good idea and that it's worth doing, then I probably should do it. Because I really appreciate my mum. I know that she's very realistic with business stuff, especially. And then she offered to help me with the money, and my grandma as well. And then I also did a crowdfunder. So
That's awesome. When people support you because they believe in you,
uh,
it keeps you going and
that's
you
what I felt the whole
feel
time. It's the only reason why I'm still,
right?
yeah, it's because I've
Yeah.
got so much support and like of everyone and people telling me how great
That's
it is
amazing.
what I'm doing. So I stay.
And that's something you see when you visit your website, the grace, love, and local support. With the support of Nozawa Onsen Village, you always mention your community there,
Mm.
but there's always your family support as well. I think that it
And
makes a big
friends, just like
difference.
broad community. And that's why it's like, a lot of people have a lot of hate to say about social media, but as someone who's spent their life away from most of their friends or making friends who live in far away parts of the world, I'm so grateful for it. And I wouldn't be able to do any of this without the support of Nozawa welcoming me and having me here, but then also like the support of just everyone in general. So I always I think it's important to acknowledge that. Like, I am alone and I'm doing this alone, but at the same time, I'm absolutely not. And it's been a really good lesson being in Japan and doing the business here. I've learned to ask for support and accept support, and that's been a really good lesson.
That's
Because I
wonderful.
can't do anything here. My Japanese isn't good enough to do anything without help. So,
But there are people who can help with the language part or can help with the
yes,
paperwork part, right? So
and I
asking
get that.
being humble to ask for help is also a
Absolutely.
skill, right?
Yes, it's interesting. Maybe you have the same thing like Japan. One of the things I love about it is it asks you to be quite humble to coexist in a community. It's that considering of others and not taking up too much space and, being very humble. But at the same time, I think it can be a little bit too much. You can be too humble. And that was a good reminder. I just did another yoga teacher training in Bali. I've done a lot of teacher trainings, and that teacher training lesson was one of the biggest things was more personal empowerment of just being like, okay, I know that you like to be humble, Rowie, but you should also talk about your achievements and know that and stand in your power a little bit more. It's that balance of being humble but also standing in your power. So
I love that idea, standing in your power. I think that's something especially hard for women, right?
mm,
To not brag, but to stand in your power, to show
yeah,
what you have done,
yes,
which
sometimes
you want people to know about, or people should.
totally.
They're probably really interested, you know?
Yeah,
We
it's funny. People on the slopes will be like, "Oh, where do you because everyone just thinks that you're a seasonaire or whatever, and they'll be like, "Oh, where do you work?" And I'm like, "Oh, I work at a cafe and I teach yoga." And people are like, "Rowie, you own a cafe, you own a yoga studio. You need to talk about this more." And I'm like, "Yeah, I probably do." So that's
Yeah.
me this year. I feel really good now about standing in my achievements and that I can stand in the achievements and everything I've done without it being arrogant.
Very good. In terms of running a vegan cafe in Japan, a lot of listeners, if they're not in Japan or haven't visited, they don't realize it is a hurdle to eat
Mm,
vegan, vegetarian in
it's
Japan
really hard.
still. So,
Yeah.
how do you find sourcing ingredients? Are you able to get that mostly locally, or do you have to
It's
import things? Or
it's getting easier and easier every year. I started the cafe, sort of when I did the pop-up I call it a pop-up now, at the dojo, at the end of 2020, 2021. So already that's 3-ish years ago, and 3 or 4, whatever. And it was really hard, but I live on the internet just constantly looking for things, and you can find things, and then it's a matter of finding it in a way that's more achievable or commercially viable. And it's getting easier and harder at the same time with the Russian war and the recent change of election in America. The price of things or just generally the cost of living has gone up a lot, particularly for imported things. So that's really hard. I think since I did the business plan 4 years ago, the cost of my goods has gone up a lot. Um, so that's hard. Yeah, with vegan food, it's about trying to be creative using a mixture of imported and local products. I'm lucky that I live in Shinshu area, like Nagano, which is really famous for its produce, which is really cool. So I have that available to me, really good local produce. Then there's things like superfoods, which I import, and it's just always trying to find the best places to get that from. I've recently found really good Japanese, made in Japan hemp protein powder. I think the laws on hemp import has changed recently in Japan, which has been cool. And creatine. So yeah, I'll start with what's easiest to find, and then I'll refine it to what's commercially viable and more local, and trying to find local variations of things that I might like. So instead of chickpeas, I'll use soybeans, or instead of moringa powder, I'll use matcha powder, or just different things like that. So lots of online sourcing, but also talking to people and and changing up ingredients. Okay, this is something that I like to make. How could I make it have a Japanese spin? So we have black sesame, kuragoma smoothies, on the menu, matcha smoothies. I use like local soy milk. There's a local tofu supplier in the village, so I get tofu from him, which we get waste like package free, which is really cool. Like that's another thing that before I moved to Japan, I was vegan and pretty much waste free, and it's been a journey adjusting here, and it's a journey of just trying to do my best now. Like obviously I create a lot more waste than I used to, but I'm also able to create less waste where I can and just focus on that. So yeah,
I
local
I really
ingredients.
noticed that, right? Like,
Mm,
your smoothies, even takeout smoothies, are you able to have these glass bottles, reusable, you can wash them, reuse them, that kinda thing?
yeah,
That's a
yeah.
great idea. You just don't see this yet in
Don't
Japan.
see I know. It's hard, like, I've also held myself back a lot in some ways because I've been probably a little bit too stubborn about waste and everything. Like, I've never had smoothie all this if you wanted to get a takeaway smoothie, you had to get it in a glass jar that you could pay extra and then bring it back and get the deposit back for. And, like, not selling things wrapped in plastic to go, and I'm making some compromises now, but then trying to balance them out in other ways or just trying to get the best version of it available. So it's, yeah, doing business in Japan, doing is all about compromise, especially for me. Like I'm already making life very hard for myself and doing something very upstream, like a vegan cafe in a ski village that you previously didn't offer alcohol. Like now we're offering alcohol, and now we offer some things like in plastic packaging, but it's like there's always an alternative. Like you don't have to get it in plastic packaging. If you can, we encourage you not to. And it's just about compromise and being like, do I want to offer this or do I not want to offer this? Because there's lots of things that I haven't offered because I didn't want to do it in plastic or
Right.
that sort of
No,
thing.
it's absolutely worth fighting that good fight, and I'm sure
Yes.
it includes how you train your staff, but
Absolutely.
it's kind of like training the customer, and then once you
Yes.
train the customer to use the reusable bottles, to pay a deposit, bring it
Mm,
back, I think most people would appreciate it once they realize, "Oh, wow, I'm not
totally. I
creating
do.
so much waste." I hope anyway that
It's the
people
same
are
as vegan food.
trainable.
Like people
Yeah.
people I think it's a training thing of like, you don't need to have meat. Food can still feel really complete and really delicious without any dairy. Like, we've won best restaurant in the village 2 years in a row and we're vegan, like against all the other pizza, pasta, ramen, everything. And it's not just that it's me, it's obviously just a natural evolution. But since people have seen that I have a market for vegan people, it's become a lot more, and gluten free, that I've noticed, whether it's just evolution or they're taking note, but it's like there's much more vegan options in the village, which is really cool. And I feel really proud of, whether I'm taking too much credit or not, but like being a part of that movement. So that feels really good.
Absolutely. And when I visited last summer and I went to some other cafes and restaurants and
Mhm.
I always asked for vegan, and to be honest, they were so much more familiar with even
Mm,
the request than other
mm.
areas, and that's also credit to you. Like
Yeah,
people, they
it's become a
understand the
little bit more
concept because
mainstream
of
now.
you,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
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 that's
it's
that's an
nice. and
awesome legacy.
and yeah, it feels good. And like the vegan cafe is on the main street in town. So, and I don't advertise it as vegan, so a lot of people come and then they're like, they eat and then they're like, "That was amazing." I was like, "That was vegan."
That's the
So,
best way. Now
yes.
you call your cafe Shizen Collective. Where does the name come from?
So when I first came here, I didn't speak any Japanese because I just came as like a gaijin on a tourist on a working holiday visa. And then I was on a road trip from Nozawa to Hakuba with some friends during the spring or summer, and they were both Japanese. And so we sort of like, and had by then picked up a bit of Japanese, and we were always would drop words in. And I was looking at the nature outside the window and I was like, "Oh my God, it's so beautiful." And they both looked at each other and they were like, "Do you know what the word for nature is, Rowie?" And I was like, "No." And they were like, Shizen, and they just knew that I would love the word because I was like, oh my God, it's so great. It's like Mother Nature. She's so zen. And it's true. And then it just stuck with, and then I always was like obsessed with the word. I've always been obsessed with nature. To be honest, if I was in an English speaking country, I would never call a vegan cafe or a healthy cafe like natural cafe because I don't like that obviousness. But I know that in Japan it's a little bit different, and it is like that. And I knew that I wanted a word for the yoga studio and cafe that was a Japanese word, but that was easy for foreigners to say. And I liked sort of the double meaning of like nature, but hinting at zen and femininity and stuff like that. And the business, like I said, I always wanted it to be a collective, like not just a yoga studio or not just a cafe. So Shizen Collective is the business. And then it's like Shizen Cafe. It was going to be like Kisuten Shizen or something like that, but I stuck with Shizen Cafe and then Shizen Yoga. And that's how the name sort of came about. And I'm just so, once you live in Japan, you just start reading everything phonetically. Like, of course, you'd pronounce it Shizen. So, yeah, it felt easy to pronounce and I liked it.
Yeah, it's wonderful. One thing we haven't you
Mhm.
have a vegan vegetarian cafe in the
Mm,
town of Nozawa Onsen, but you also do retreats, not just
mm,
in your area, but you've done it around Japan or other areas, right? So
yes.
tell us
So
about your retreats a bit.
Thank you. Previous to Japan, I've always been a yoga teacher and always run retreats. Like I used to run retreats in Nepal, in Greece, in Australia, in Bali. And then when I came here and settled here, like it's part of the reason I settled here because Nozawa just feels like such a beautiful place to run retreats. And it's because it's a walking village. You don't need a car to get around. That's a really big consideration when you're organizing retreats. And during COVID, obviously, I saw a lot of local businesses struggling. So I wanted to offer, sorry, the retreats on the website isn't up yet because I'm doing too much, a bit disorganized. They are coming. That's on my list to do today is advertise the retreats for 2025. If you go on my Spiritual Pretzel website, there's some information about the retreats there. So yeah, I saw a lot of local businesses struggling. A lot of time retreats, the money is very centered in one place because it's like you come to the retreat center or you come to the yoga teacher and all the money is mostly within that one business. And being new to Nozawa and just feeling so accepted by the community, I always want to try to give back to where I am. So I started organizing retreats here, which were wine and wellness retreats, which again is like trying to make yoga more accessible and less exclusive. And I have always liked wine and done like wine related yoga things too. So Nozawa has a lot of amazing restaurants and I knew a local sommelier here. So I started organizing wine and wellness retreats in the village, which basically distributed a lot of the money to different restaurants and local businesses in town all over. That was the first type of retreat that I started doing in Nozawa. And then I started doing Deepen Your Practice, which was more aimed at like more people who are regular practice and want to explore it more. And just other retreats in Nozawa. I've also done a retreat in Ishigaki, so off Okinawa, which was really beautiful. I loved it so much doing that there. It was like a post-winter defrost and detox retreat in a really beautiful old sort of restored kaminka near the beach, which was beautiful. And then I've done yoga. I often go to like Kochi Miyazaki. I haven't done retreats there yet. I've thought about it. It's a little, I'm starting to focus more of my retreats in Nozawa just because I've noticed that I need to go do a little less, not spread myself so thin.
And travel
And
can be such a tiring part of it, right? Setting
yeah,
up
and
somewhere else too, right?
yes, like, I have the systems for it, but honestly, Nozawa is so great. People know me for Nozawa, and I feel like I can give such a rich experience for people on retreats here. So that's where
For
I'm
sure.
focusing more of them. But I'm still organizing, I love the Kumanokoto Trail trek in that area of Japan, Wakayama, which is also struggling with depopulation. Like, obviously, there's a lot of tourism in that area, but still, I yeah, so Kumanokoto retreat in 2025 will probably happen.
That sounds awesome. So on your information about retreats, basically 3 to 5 days,
Mm.
usually from March to November.
I do
People
them in the
can,
off season, yeah, not in the snow
right?
season.
And then people can contact you with the dates they're interested in. Then when you decide the dates, you'll get in touch with people once
Yes,
they,
ideally, the retreats
right?
will be advertised. The set so I have set retreat dates, which are all through March, April, and then, September, October, November. And then I also offer with a couple of different companies in Nozawa, like Dokuho retreats, which just means like self-guided retreats essentially. So you can come on your own at a time that's convenient for you. And I give you like a self-guided retreat plan. Um, and you join the yoga classes and everything like that. So that's a little bit more private. And then I've also organized a lot of private retreats for people, like on demand, tailored retreats. So I have set retreat dates. They're usually advertised on the Spiritual Pretzel website, and the Shizen website will be very soon. People can get in contact with me on Instagram or via email or WhatsApp to ask me about it too.
Wonderful. I know you're busy and you've got to pop off in a minute, but you are also collaborating with a local potter, ceramic
Yeah.
artist, and you have mindfulness clay. This is one of the unique
Mm.
events that you do. Now,
Yes.
is it today? You doing it
It's
today?
today,
Okay.
yes. So
Wow.
Emma is originally from Australia, but she's done apprenticeships and residencies in Japan over a couple of years. And she's just spent time, I forget the town that she's been in. Emma Rose Ceramics is her name on Instagram, and she creates the most beautiful stuff. And she worked for me last year. We collaborated on ceramics workshops, but she also helped in the cafe. And she's just a really beautiful soul. And I really love her and her work. So she's got a mindfulness and clay workshop today at the cafe, which is cool. I always love collaborating with people and sharing the space like that. So yeah,
Wonderful. Well, thank you so
thank
much, Rowie,
you.
for joining. It
My
was so
pleasure. I
wonderful
feel
to
so
catch
honored
up.
to talk to you and catch
Yay!
up and everything. Thanks for sharing the good word of Shizen. I really appreciate it,
Of
JJ.
course, and I hope I can get back there, and
Yeah, anytime. You're always welcome.
experience your wonderful community that you're helping
Yeah,
develop
it's nice.
there. Very
It's always
special place.
special. Yeah, I'll feed you all the vegan food.
Ugh, I have to fill up. It's one of the few places it's not just because it's vegan, but you just make everything so darn tasty that
Yeah,
it
that's why
just
I don't try to
amazing.
advertise it as vegan. Thank you for saying that. But yeah, we actually have like locals night on Wednesdays, so that's tonight at the cafe. So it's like a big buffet dinner.
Oh,
Tonight's theme is like Japanese, so we've got like Japanese
beautiful.
sushi and all the things. So it'll be good.
And it's a great place, also for locals to connect with other people,
Yeah,
who are living in the area, right? Like you
yeah,
said, locals to
yeah, it's nice. I'm really happy with the like just the diversity of people and minds that come to the space. I really wanted to create an accessible space that didn't feel exclusive for Gaijins or just Japanese or everything like that. And even the team is so international. Like I have 12 staff and everyone's from a different place. There's 4 Japanese girls, and then there's a couple of half Japanese girls, half something else, South Africa, Denmark, Spain,
wow.
everything, New Zealand. I'm the only Australian on the team. So, yeah.
But you must have a lot of Australian visitors. This is the time you
Mm.
really see a lot of Australians coming over enjoying snow sports, right?
Yeah, like there's definitely a lot of Australians that come to Nozawa, but it's very international. It doesn't feel like only nationality that comes here. I think if you go to Hakuba, it's a lot more well known for Australians, and Hakuba's great too. And there's lots of vegan options and organic options there, which is amazing. But Nozawa has very international vibes. Like it's very well known for domestic tourism, but then international tourism. Like I'm always surprised when I meet Americans or Europeans coming for the winter because they have such good snow near them and it's so far, but they still want to come because I think Nozawa they're not just like they're coming for incredible snow and terrain, but also the Japanese, like it feels like a very cultural experience coming here with the onsens and the food and the just scenery. So I think it has a lot
Absolutely.
to offer, which is cool. So
Yeah,
yeah,
fantastic. Thank you so much.
thank
There's
you.
so much to enjoy there, including all the wonderful things you're
Yes,
doing. Thank you
please
so
come back.
much.
You're welcome anytime. Let me know. I'd love to have you in Funky Cottage. And
Oh,
thanks for talking
wonderful.
to me this morning. So good to catch up. I'll
Well,
hopefully
good
visit
luck.
you in I'll
Yes,
hopefully
yes.
visit you in the spring or summer or something like that.
Oh, that'd be wonderful. Please come anytime.
Thank
Thanks so much for
you.
joining. Thanks everybody for watching. Take
Thank
care.
you.